I want to welcome everyone to the 15th meeting of the 46th year of the Rotary Club of Dublin and Worthington. And today's invocation and pledge is going to be done by Shirley Lambert. Shirley, you're on.
Okay, let us pray. We're praying for our healthcare workers as they continue to need strength and emotional stability during this surge of the pandemic. We ask for a speedy distribution of safe vaccine so that the world can return to being safe and the COVID virus will be under control. Our hearts go out to those who have lost loved ones and those who are suffering. In your name, we ask these things. Amen.
Shirley, the pledge, please.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And next we'll go on to President-elect Steve. Can you go ahead and ask for visiting Rotaries and Rotarians and guests and ask for any happy dollars?
Yes, so we do not have any visiting Rotarians that I can see from the list. And we do have a guest, of course, our speaker, and she will be introduced later. And so that will take us right to happy dollars. Who has one?
Yeah, I've got two of them today, Steve.
Go for it.
I just got off the phone with April Kwan, who some of you may remember was an international scholar. And we mentored her about 25 years ago or so. You may remember also that she went to Los Angeles with her degree in journalism and became the anchor for Chinese news in the Los Angeles area. She has kept in touch with us. One of her daughters, for example, just graduated from MIT. So I've been a very successful family. And it's one of the great things of Rotary when you mentor somebody and they become really part of your family. And actually, the reason she called me today was because today is my birthday.
Oh,
And I'm
happy
celebrating
birthday.
that.
Birthday.
Yay.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
And in line with our tradition of providing a dime for every year, I have 91 dimes for when we all get together again. Thank you.
It's amazing, Court. I remember when you turned 90, and I thought, my goodness, that's impressive. What is that called? Not octogenarian. Kip would know.
It's called old.
All right.
We call
Mature,
it
yes.
mature.
Who else has a happy dollar?
I do, Steve.
Connie, go ahead, and then we'll go to Peggy.
I'd like to.
I
Yeah, I'm just
have
very.
two. One,
Go ahead.
our granddaughters
I'm
was
talking
in
to
a horrible
Okay, but I
accident
think that
last week. And thankfully, they came out of it okay, totaled the truck.
Oh my gosh.
But Skylar had a severe concussion and missed several days of school, but Joey's okay. And just thankful for that. That's my happy dollar. And then also our grandson just reported to Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. And he's into studying right now. So those are my two happy dollars.
Good. We're glad that everybody's mostly okay.
Right.
Wish it was a little happier than that, but yeah, that's
Yes.
great. Connie?
Yeah, I'm just happy that I could find the old glasses after stomping my brand new glasses to smithereens. So save your old glasses.
Valuable lessons at the Rotary Club. Good.
Mhm.
Shirley, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to tell you that Judy Barnhart had surgery. Bonnie maybe knows more about this, but serious surgery. And so and then she went to a rehab center. I believe she's home now. So I did send her a card on behalf of the Rotary to wish her a speedy recovery. It was in our church bulletin. I think it was a kidney surgery, something like that. It was pretty serious. But
Oh, wow.
Bonnie, do you know more than that? So anyway, I was in
Bonnie,
touch
you're
with
on
her.
mute.
Shirley, are
Judy
those-
Barnhart had a kidney stone, was passing kidney stones, and
Oh.
one of the stones was infected and caused an infection in her system.
Right.
She lost control of all her body movements. I mean, she went to rehab to learn how to walk and talk and do all this stuff again because something happened in the surgery that caused that. So, but she has recovered. Pete said she was supposed to have come home last Tuesday or Wednesday, so she should be at home.
Okay.
They're
Thank you.
in Florida, right, Dick? And
They are in Florida, but he will be back in time to pick up the poinsettias that he ordered.
I got an email from her this morning, but it was just about something totally unrelated.
Okay. Well, Shirley, thank you for sharing
Sure.
that information with us. Anybody else have a happy dollar?
I have a happy
Jennifer.
dollar. So I'm happy we got to visit our granddaughter this past weekend. Especially happy now since we have our stay-at-home advisory for the next month. So we got that trip in just in time.
Perfect. That's great. And on that note, I'm not going to risk any more sad news. We're going to move on to announcements. I will say, John Butterfield, we were supposed to have a poll today, courtesy of John Butterfield, but due to, I wish I could say technical complications, it was really technical incompetence on my part. So next week we will have a poll.
Okay.
Thank you, John, for supplying those.
Okay.
Back to you, Jim.
So right now I'm looking for announcements, and we should have quite a few because we have many different projects going on. And I will start with Shirley because you're unmuted, and then we'll go to Peggy after that. Go ahead, Shirley.
Okay, by now you've probably all received the email about the online auction that great Paula Moulton is going to help us with. So I hope you're thinking about things you can donate, and I need to know what those are. If you would email me or text me if you have any idea what you're going to donate so that I know where we're at. It's a real golden opportunity for us because she has 80,000 viewers on the auction site that would be bidding on what we bring in. So if you have a car, a used car, a golf cart, a camper, something big, it would be great. But any kind of items we can put on there. And the email told you what we cannot take, but I will be making calls, especially if you gave last year. But if you could go ahead and text me or email me, it will save you getting a call from me. But I hope you're enthusiastic. It's a golden opportunity. And thank you, Mike, for your lovely wife's help.
I also want to mention that if you do take items to her office, please do not go in the front office. Go to the back to deliver the items. I'll be sending an email out this afternoon that is a little more descriptive where you go, but they are under COVID restrictions, so you can't enter where the employees enter. You have to go to the back loading dock area. So now, Peggy, you have, you could unmute. Peggy, you need to unmute.
You like my antlers?
Yes.
It's that time of year again, folks. I sent out a letter describing our Christmas for the children this year. I hope everybody received that. We're in need of funds because of the COVID outbreak. We can't really be at the meetings and collect the items like we normally do. And it's a little disappointing because we all enjoy shopping for the kids and wrapping the gifts and whatnot. So we'll miss that. But the only real way we could do that would be with donations. And we will then buy gift cards for the children. I'll buy individual cards for all the children with their names on it. Put whatever funds we can collect and gift cards, and each of the children will get a gift card, but I will then put those in a manila folder and give those to the parents so that the parents could buy gifts for the children prior to Christmas. And this way, if it's $100, $200, I will also contact our principals and let them know that the parents that the children have money coming, and we'd like for them strongly suggest that that money goes towards each of the children. But that's the safest way to do it this year. And I've also bought stockings for all the children, and I've got loads of sweets I'm going to put in those stockings, and some other little things for the children for Christmas in addition to their gift cards, so they will have something like that. This year we've got 9 children. Their ages 4 through 17. And we also have asked that the board if they would give us enough money for the parents to buy groceries for Christmas. So we're really in need with 9 children. We're really in need of those funds so those children can have a Christmas to remember. Sponsored by the Rotary Club of Dublin Worthington. So the schools are excited for it. They're happy that we're going forward with this. And I just appreciate anything anybody can give us.
Dick, I think you have an announcement.
Poinsettias. Can you read all that? There's a nice flyer available. I hope it's been corrected to let people know where to pick up the poinsettias. It says 400 West Wilson Bridge Road, but doesn't tell the suite number. And I think that should be on the list here because some of the folks won't know where's what. So take care of that. Number 2, sales are very good. I didn't use my fingers and toes to count up the sales, but I do know it's well over 100. We have had some large orders. There's a couple orders for 20 and 25, several orders for 10. Now we need those people who are ordering ones and twosies to get on the stick and order their poinsettias because we're shooting for 400 to 500 plants, and I think we'll do very well because they are a good quality plant. I'm glad Mike has gotten in contact with his supplier and is providing us plants. So remember, we have this week and next week, the Wednesday after Thanksgiving will be the last time we can, there's 2 times to order, yes. Week of Thanksgiving and the first week of December. December 2nd is the last day to we can take orders so we can get a count up and get ready to distribute on the 9th of December. So take time, give people your call. Those who worked last year, call your friends from last year. They'll more than likely take a plant or 2. And lastly, Bill Shantz was co-chairman and the heavy lifter last year, and he sold quite a few. If somebody has his list of customers, I'd be glad to call him. I do not have his list. I know he sold to one of the banks an order for 25. So if anybody knows who's who, please let me know. Thank you.
Steve?
Questions?
Oh, go ahead. Steve, you have, you've already posted the actual link And you should be using the link to make your orders. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Dick said. So the order form is really for our club members to use with other people. It is not meant to tally your, order and then submit back to Jim or anybody. The link that I posted in the chat, and we will send it out in the email again, is where you should put your final tally for, how many plants you've sold.
Could you bring that link up for a moment on screen share?
Yeah, I've got it right here. Hopefully everybody can see that. So far, Dick is right. Yeah, we've got 10, 21, 10, 10, 25. Don't worry about the math in the total due column. If you get 10, remember it's just $100. It's $12 a plant otherwise. We'll sort out the math later. But yes, anybody should be able to edit this at any time.
Yeah. So
Thank
please you get on that order form. I started to receive people sending in the flyer. The flyer is for your use to send it out to friends and others over the email, or actually put copies out at your place of business for people to order. You then tally those and then put it on the order form. So I appreciate your help with that. Go ahead.
It is Suite 100, so it is my office. As soon as you walk into the building, we're the door first on the right, just in case anybody needs to know.
And I will mention also, I want to thank the folks who have signed up and anyone else who's willing to help. For this weekend, we will be doing the food pantry collections, both in Dublin and in Worthington. So you can still help out. We'd appreciate that. But please bring items to one of those locations. Anyone else?
Jim, Joe Patchen here.
Yeah.
Sorry, my camera is not functioning on this computer right now, but that's probably not harming anyone. I just wanted to say, if anyone has ideas for speakers, our pipeline's a little drier than usual right now, and please drop me a line, and I'll work with you to help fill that out. And we do intend to get a more formal structure to the program committee here shortly. So bear with us as we continue to do the one-off method. So please contact me if you have some ideas, and I'll be happy to help.
Thank you, Joe. Doug?
Yeah.
Did you just come on?
Well, I've been on for a while.
Oh, okay.
Joe, my offer to give a presentation on the disturbances in Portland stands.
Fully understood. Absolutely. We're looking at a way to do that.
Well, I'm available anytime if there are open dates.
Okay.
In the spirit of club business, then I will share that the communications committee is meeting this Friday at 8 a.m. I think so far we've had good feedback from the club, and the newsletter's been going out, and social media is up and running. But if anybody would like to join us and opine or share their feedback or even join the committee, we'd love to have them. So see me if you are interested. Thank you.
Yeah, and that committee has done some really good work and has expanded into several areas. So they could use the help. And I would encourage anyone to volunteer. The one thing that I need to say about that is that you do not have to be a technically extremely qualified. You just have to be willing to do some real work in helping us put stories together, and folks there on the committee can help post and work with the internet.
I really like the summaries of the meetings, and so thanks to the team that's doing that.
Okay. If nothing else, I'd like to move on and ask Sue Cody, could you introduce our speaker for today? You'll have to unmute.
Yes, I'd be delighted to introduce our speaker for today. She's my friend and she's my neighbor, and we share a lot of academic background. It's with pleasure that I'd like to sort of summarize her vita and give you some of the highlights, and then turn the discussion over to her. Cheryl Achterberg is her name, and she has most recently been Dean of the College of Education and Human Ecology, I think it's called now. And that was the college I was in when I was teaching. So we have that in common. Her education, her background is what I would call multidisciplinary. She has degrees in biology, human development, and a PhD in nutritional science from Cornell University. She has won some awards for her teaching. She's taught courses in nutrition, education, information science, and international studies. Impressive to me is that she has been a leader in 3 land-grant colleges, namely Penn State, Iowa State, and Ohio State. And in those positions, she has had a variety of responsibilities. Let's see if I don't want to leave anything out here. It was impressive to me that on the faculty at Penn State University, where she rose through the professional ranks by attaining her tenure in 1991 and the rank of full professor in 1996. She also directed the Nutrition Center there from 1992 to 1997. She's authored many articles, chapters in books, etc. Today, she's going to speak to us on dementia, which has grown out of, since she's retired, she's taken her skills in another direction, and she started a blog on, let's see, let me get the, it's called About Dementia and Caregiving, mostly. And the mostly has been interesting. George and I are readers of her blog. So she has been working on that blog since she's been at home. I think that's the highlights. So I'm proud to introduce as our speaker today, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a PowerPoint here. Let's see if this is all going to work. What's it doing? Here we go.
She needs Paul.
Yeah. You're not seeing this, are you?
Not yet. Oh, here it comes.
You have it now?
Yeah, if you maximize and put it in presentation mode, we should be all set.
And presentation mode.
If you go to the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little slider bar, and there should be like a, to the left of the minus sign. Click that, yep, slideshow. Ta-da.
Ta-da. Okay. So I want to just begin by saying I'm not a medical doctor. I have had about, more than 10 years now being a caregiver for someone with dementia. I'm well read on the subject, and I hope I have some good things to share with you today. You've all heard of dementia and Alzheimer's disease, I'm sure it tends to live like a skeleton in the closet. People seem to be afraid to talk about it. And you might even have one in your own closet. I hope today's talk will free you to engage in more conversations. We all know somebody with the disease. There's hardly a week that goes by that you don't hear of another celebrity succumbing to Alzheimer's or dementia. Again, some of you may have family members with it as well. I simply today want to share some information that I believe is pertinent to everyone online today and pertinent to our loved ones. And ultimately, I believe it's pertinent to society at large. So what are we going to do? I'll briefly describe dementia and Alzheimer's, what the main stages are, how widespread it is, how it's diagnosed, how it's treated, and some ideas about how to prevent it. So first of all, there's confusion between dementia and Alzheimer's, and I'd like to compare it to an umbrella. Dementia is the general term. Underneath of it, it's a whole variety of different kinds of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common type. It accounts for more than 60% of all dementia diagnoses, but as you can see, there are a variety of others as well. My own husband has what is called a mixed dementia, which means he has multiple kinds at once. I don't want to dwell on this point too much, but I do want to underscore Alzheimer's disease and dementia are not normal. They should not be expected and they should not be brushed off. It's an abnormal disease. There are 3 stages to Alzheimer's, ostensibly described as mild, moderate, and severe. That sounds easy enough, but the 3 stages are actually fairly hard to discriminate between one and another. And I think it's because this disease creeps up on people. It's very, very slow moving. And so at any given time, any person might have some symptoms related to multiple stages. So in the beginning, however, you might notice yourself or a loved one becoming a little mixed up at times. They may misplace objects, lose track of the date is a very common thing. They may forget names of people. Sometimes they may forget to take their medications, which is a concern. The most important thing is that the thought processes become a little slower. So talking and making decisions on the phone or on the fly may become more difficult. When you forget something, however, in the mild stage, if it doesn't come back, if your memory doesn't come back for that point, that's indicative of disease. If your memory does come back, that's indicative that you do not have this disease, right? The disease state, what you forgot, does not come back. As the disease progresses then into the moderate stage, people tend to become more easily frustrated. They lose their temper more often. And then certain kinds of activities definitely become more dangerous. Driving is what first comes top to mind. They may also begin to wander, forget the name of relatives. It becomes harder to hide symptoms if you have them. At some point, you may begin to experience incontinence. It's like riding a roller coaster, though. These things are not steady state. Sometimes you have great days, sometimes not. But gradually, as I said, over time, it becomes more and more overwhelming. And as the person slides into the severe stage, their basic functions, biologic functions begin to deteriorate. They need help eating, feeding, getting in and out of bed, toileting. The communication skills decline rapidly and they become more and more fragile. They're immunocompromised. All kinds of biological systems begin to degenerate as well. And this corresponds to the brain degeneration over time. Just to be very direct, these diseases affect the brain directly by killing brain cells. So this slide indicates what a healthy brain might look like in cross-section. And then in advanced Alzheimer's, you'll see the holes and caverns and crevices. I guess I'll never forget when I was in the doctor's office with our own neurologist, and he showed me all the pictures of my own husband. It was shocking to see what had happened to the brain. So by the time someone is in advanced Alzheimer's, they typically have lost 1/3 of their brain mass. And depending where that loss has occurred, which is not predictable, it will then affect what kinds of functions that individual is able to show or not. Each case is unique. That's what I want to underscore. So what causes all of this? You've probably heard of plaques and tangles, and I'll try to explain it in very simple terms. The plaques are found, it's that green thing there, in and around the nerve cells, and they are composed primarily of beta amyloid. You might have heard of amyloid. Drug companies are trying very hard to create a drug to eliminate this beta amyloid in the brain. But it's not the amyloid that actually does the damage. What happens is the amyloid triggers another reaction inside the cell. And that is what we call the tau, T-A-U, tau protein. The tau protein actually becomes corrupted. We all have that inside of our cells. It's kind of like a support framework to hold the cell together in its shape. But when it degrades, it just becomes a big tangled mess. And that's why they call it tangles. Those tangles are what actually strangle the nerve from the inside. So plaques and tangles, the plaque triggers the trouble, the tangles make the trouble. So the disease, as you might guess, affecting a brain like that is very, very serious. It's one of the diseases that most profoundly affects not only the person who has it, but the entire family. It transforms life, not just for the patient, but for all the loved ones within that patient's sphere. It's described as the most debilitating, devastating condition known to humankind. That's as it progresses. What I can share with you, and of course this is very personal, but I wrote this poem to explain what it feels like to be a caregiver. And this was written about midway in the moderate stage. The caregiver, she tolerates the temperature and the TV volume, endures the insults, deflects the constant pawing, cleans and cleans the bathroom. He does not hold his penis when he pees, and accommodates his wants, even when he refuses dinner, then eats the food upon her plate. She fills the blanks in his speech, soothes the hallucinations, bows her head when he calls out for a former lover, and wakes with her jaw aching because her teeth were clenched all night. I think this quotation actually best sums up the importance and seriousness of this disease. It reads, "Dementia is perhaps the greatest social, medical, economic, scientific, philosophic, and ethical challenge of our times." That was written by Sally Magnuson. She wrote a beautiful book called Where Memories Go. She lives in Great Britain. She's a journalist there. And the book was about her mother and her mother's journey with Alzheimer's. But she also does an excellent job describing how this disease is impacting and moving across all of Europe as well. Whoops. Okay, We can't ignore the economic impact of the disease here in Columbus on a personal level and assisted living. That's 24/7 care. It costs between $9,000 and $10,000 per month inclusive. At-home care will cost as much if you have outside providers come in. Family care without assistance really isn't possible as the disease progresses without outside help, unless you have multiple family members who can ensure round-the-clock supervision and who have the strength to lift and assist with all activities of daily living as needed. And this is what we're facing now with my father. His wife doesn't want to let him go. She has multiple caregivers coming in, but it's extremely hard work. He fell last week and he was on the floor for 3.5 hours before anyone could come and get him back up again. From a societal level, each case costs us about $50,000 when you look at the folks on Medicaid. And the Alzheimer's Association estimates this year we'll spend $305 billion on Alzheimer's and dementia care, and they estimate $1 trillion by the year 2050. So how widespread is this disease? Right now in the US, we have about 5.8 million people with it. Worldwide, it's about 50 million. And the number of people with these diseases doubles every 10 years. When you look at the numbers of deaths in the US, it's interesting that if you add Alzheimer's and flu together, they become the third most frequent cause of death in the US. COVID in 2020 changes everything. 2018 was the last year that I could get any stats on. But the point here is that flu and pneumonia is an important disease. It's often lost now in COVID discussions, but a very, very high percentage of people who die from flu or pneumonia have Alzheimer's or dementia. And the same is true right now for COVID. Over 40% of all COVID case deaths are from people with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And Ohio statistics mirror these almost exactly. There we go. Okay, so who is at risk? Age, race, and gender are the primary issues. Women are twice as likely to get these diseases as men. African Americans are twice as likely as Caucasians. Latinas are 1.5 times as likely as Caucasians. And for those who are 85 years or older, at that point in our demographics, broadly speaking, 1/3 of folks have this disease. I think if you live long enough, you will inevitably have one of these dementias. So much for wanting to live past 100. So if you or your loved ones have symptoms, I beg you not to be the proverbial ostrich with your head in the sand. It doesn't serve anybody's best interest. If there's the slightest question, to go in and be examined by your doctor. The first thing your doctor will do is to rule out other causes for forgetfulness. There are a number. Thyroid disease can do it. Lack of B12. It's amazing if you're low in B12 and you just start taking those pills, what will turn around and how quickly. Stroke, of course, can affect it. A brain tumor can affect it. Excuse me. Cerebral bleeding or any other injury to the brain. I'm going to take a sip here, just a moment. Thank you. And a doctor will also administer cognitive tests. They might interview your spouse or other family members. The only really definitive way to diagnose Alzheimer's per se is through autopsy. I don't think any of us will volunteer today for that. Brain scans show a lot. They can show plaques and sometimes tangles, and that would indicate Alzheimer's, but not everybody with plaques and tangles has Alzheimer's. And of course, for all the other dementias that don't have plaques and tangles, the brain scan can show brain destruction, but there won't be plaques or tangles. As far as I know, insurance doesn't cover any of these tests, so beware of that. And they're expensive. How do we treat them? Right now, we don't have a lot of options. These are the basic 3 drugs that are used. They all basically act the same way. The trouble in large part is that the changes in brain chemistry happen 15 to 20 years before symptoms. So when people start taking these drugs, they may change or decrease symptoms for a couple of years, and after that really don't do too much good. So if you have somebody taking these drugs and they've been on them for 5 or 10 years, you should ask questions as to why that continues. So the better course of action, of course, would be to prevent it. These things are fairly basic. Look after your heart. Physical exercise, by that we mean 150 minutes a week. That means 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Follow a healthy diet. I think the easiest thing I can say as a nutritionist is what's good for your heart is good for your head. Obviously, you can talk a lot more about that. You need to challenge your brain by learning new things. Music is one wonderful way to challenge your brain, learning new songs, even if all you do is hum along, or if you actually were to work on learning a new instrument, that's one of the best ways to challenge way beyond crosswords. And to have social activity where there is interaction, that's the main thing. So whether it's on Zoom or anything else, it's the interaction that matters. I like to add these things as well. Hearing aids, the research is very, very clear that for those who lack hearing and those who don't wear their hearing aids, the damage happens much more quickly and it progresses more rapidly and it's more severe. So please wear your hearing aids. Depression needs to be treated. It just makes everything worse if a person is depressed. There are ways to treat depression separate from anything that might be described for dementia or Alzheimer's per se. Quality sleep naturally is important. If you're still working, try to decrease stress, maybe want to kick back on some of the hours and avoid blows to the head. My own husband rode his bike, just like we see Joe Biden riding his bike around now. He had 2 bike accidents, smashed a helmet to smithereens. That obviously wasn't very good for his condition right now. So take care of your head. This is my husband and my dog. It's hard now. Ageism is rampant. It's not fair. It's not right. It's real. Dementia and Alzheimer's disease research is greatly underfunded. I mean, it's just a teeny tiny fraction of what goes into heart disease or cancer. And as the talk showed you, it's the 3rd leading cause of death overall. So while people now are working and thinking and talking about social justice, I would urge that everyone raise ageism as an issue and we should all try to meet the needs of our older population. They deserve some tenderness and respect and care. And when you think about it, it is our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers, it's us. And we all need to work against this terrible scourge. When you think of COVID, you think of 200,000 climbing now up to 300,000 deaths, and it's horrible. And the whole country is obviously involved. But when you think about those who right now are diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, that's 5.8 million, and 100% of them will die of this. So give what you can. I believe we all have gifts. We can all care. We can all be tender and respectful to other elders. And I hope you might consider donating to Alzheimer's research as well. This is something that matters to all of us. And I hope that you will be free of it. I hope that you don't live in fear of it. We all have to understand more, do more, and live well with every day that we have. And I know my time is up, but if there's time for questions, I'd be happy to have some. Thank you. Yeah. Well, this is my blog site. I encourage everyone who's interested to check into that. Every week I have 1 or 2 new posts. And also the Alzheimer's organization here in Central Ohio has lots and lots of good materials. Thank you very much.
Cheryl, I have a question, and that is particular to Alzheimer's and any particular sub branch of that. Is it run in families or inherited? In part, I ask that because my grandmother had it severely. My uncle, who actually was a researcher, a biochemist in the area, was working hard on it. My father, he and my father both died, with that being the primary cause. So I wondered if you could speak to that.
Absolutely. There are a couple of genes that are associated with Alzheimer's disease in particular. On a worldwide basis, that accounts for only 1% of the diagnoses thus far. It tends to be very strong for early onset. So if someone acquires dementia or Alzheimer's before the age 60, sometimes even in their 40s, they may be struck by this disease. It's the early onset that tends to be genetic, not so much the later onset. Is that helpful?
Well, both my father and uncle, it was later onset. It was they were past their 60s. So that's interesting. And is there genetic testing?
Yes, and you can ask your doctor for it. It's actually APOC4 is the gene that is most indicative. And if you carry one gene for it, the chances of you getting the disease are in the high teens, maybe up to 30%. If you carry 2 genes, the risk is more than twice as much. But that can definitely be tested.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, George, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Cheryl, what about prevention? There's some things that I was very surprised at that we can do to slow it down or prevent it.
Well, as I try to present, and there just wasn't a lot of time to go through all of this, but wearing your hearing aids is important, decreasing stress, getting enough sleep is absolutely critical. Exercise helps. A healthy diet helps. I don't want to try to prescribe one food versus another food or one vitamin versus another specific vitamin, with the exception of B12. Basically, everybody over 60 or 65 years old should be taking B12 every single day. A deficiency definitely has a neurological effect. It affects memory, it affects learning, and it's just part of aging. That you don't have the acid in your stomach to convert the B12 in your diet in a sufficient amount to meet your needs. So you should take at least that vitamin. And what else, George, were you especially curious about?
Well, the one I was especially curious about is what I don't do is drink coffee.
Oh, the coffee part. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So this research is fairly recent, but there's a pretty good study, meaning it was double blinded. It was a good study. It looks like the sweet spot is 3 cups of coffee a day. More doesn't help, and the positive influence is up to 3 cups. Tea doesn't cut it as much. The effect seems to be in part due to the caffeine, so decaffeinated won't work, but it also seems to have something to do with the other compounds in the coffee, which together work with the caffeine to help prevent dementia. It's going to be a small percentage, but hey, it's worth it. I've never liked coffee. I'm teaching myself to drink coffee now. There's so little you can do to actually prevent it. I'm going to grab onto anything that comes along. So I'm glad you asked that question. Thanks, George.
And Christy, Ruffy was happy to hear that.
What about alcohol?
There is a form of dementia due to overconsumption of alcohol. Overconsumption, chronic alcoholism, not for everybody, but for a certain number of people, actually kills brain cells. So it's one of the causes of dementia. But having a drink is not harmful, not helpful, not harmful. The reason that coffee helps is because it opens the blood vessels up into the brain so that more blood circulates into the brain. Anything that helps with that is good. Alcohol, as you know, is a depressant. So I don't think I've seen any studies that specifically say, you know, how much alcohol is going to be damaging, but it's not going to be good. Most nursing homes that I have visited and assisted living will allow a person to have a small amount every day if that's what they so wish. So I don't think any doctors will prohibit it at this point. Is there anything else I might address?
Have you ever read the book by Diane McGowan, Living in the Labyrinth?
No, I have not. I will write that down.
It's my husband's cousin that she suffers from early onset Alzheimer's. It's a very good book. It was on the national bestseller list, but it's Diane McGowan.
Okay, I will read it. Have you read it? Is there something that stood out to you?
Yes, I've read it. They had a made-for-TV movie on when she came out with the book, and it was about how little things like Diane Sawyer interviewed her, and she said she loved to bake and she would put cookies in the oven, but when the alarm went off, she didn't know whether to pull it out or raise it up. So she burned her hand several times.
Oh my.
Her son came home one day and she was putting laundry on the line and it was dirty laundry. She thought she'd washed the laundry. She started making notes all over the house. So the family noticed that she had notes on even how to go to the grocery store, counting change, things like that. So
that's all very, very common set of behaviors that we observe. It's one of the reasons that living by yourself with Alzheimer's is not a good idea. But your comments also segue beautifully to the blog that will be coming out this Friday that I wrote about basically, are your pans killing you? And for all the non-stick pans that are available, meaning 100% of them, when they are overheated, they produce a toxic gas, happens to kill birds dead in their cages. It's also not very good for us. But your example of the baking cookies and having it get hurt and burnt would be a classic example of a situation where these toxic gases would be released. The evidence is still limited in humans, but according to the American Cancer Society, these toxic gases are related to prostate cancer, breast cancer, and testicular cancer. So I'm trying to urge people generally, but especially in households where people have Alzheimer's or dementia, to get rid of all of their pots and pans with no stick liners in them.
Cheryl, are there some common forgetfulness things that we do that aren't related to this onset of this disease? I mean,
certainly, as a natural course of aging, as I said, our brains tend to work more slowly. And there's a certain amount of forgetfulness, like you forget where you parked your car, you forget where you put your glasses. That's normal. So, I mean, it happens to me all the time. I forget one thing or another, but a couple hours later go, oh yeah, I know where I set that. And then I'll go retrieve it. But if you have the disease, that oh yeah moment doesn't happen. Does that make sense?
You spoke to, in that umbrella of dementia, you had Parkinson's listed down there. Is there a correlation or anything that you could talk about respect to Parkinson's with Alzheimer's or this whole situation?
They're two different diseases. They're both kinds of dementia. When you look at the whole universe of people with dementia, I believe that Parkinson's accounts for about 6% of that group. So I'm not aware of overlaps between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. That might be possible. We'd have to ask a different doctor about that. But I've never observed or heard of an overlap between the two.
Are the causes with this brain deterioration the same as with dementia as in Parkinson's?
Ultimately, yes. But the course is different. You see different symptoms in a different progression. So more of what we would typically describe as voluntary muscle movements become involuntary muscle movements. In other kinds of dementia, that would normally come at a later stage than it does with Parkinson's. My husband, for example, has quite a pronounced tremor now, but it is a different kind of tremor than people have with Parkinson's, which is very specific. Their posture is specific. So the very specific kinds of neurological damage that occurs with Parkinson's is different than in any other kind of dementia. And for those who practice and care for people with dementias, they can recognize this essentially immediately.
Thank you.
Connie, the last question then.
Yes.
Then we'll take a break.
Of course, my mother has severe Alzheimer's, but my husband also has been diagnosed with dementia. And he's probably in the mid-level at this point, but since May, he has had 3 hospitalizations where he had to be put to sleep. And I feel I have only had one physician that agreed with me, but every time he is put to sleep, it seems to make the dementia progress.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I think one of the hardest things about COVID right now, when one of our loved ones is hospitalized and they happen to have dementia, and this happens a lot as a result of falls, and we're not allowed to visit and we're not allowed to be in there, it really sets these individuals backwards. It definitely does. And if it's at all possible, you don't want anyone with Alzheimer's or dementia in the hospital, if that's possible. You'd like to have them treated someplace else, because the disorientation and confusion that occurs there typically, and sad to say this is true, but it's true, nurses and other hospital workers are not trained in dementia care. They don't know how to respond. They often respond in very negative ways. And the net effect on these patients, it is pronounced. It might be better if their caregiver could stay with them in the hospital. I've had to experience this too with my very own husband, and it was just awful. Like I said, don't go in unless you absolutely have to. And if you go in, brace yourself. It's going to set them backwards.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Thank you. We need to wrap up the meeting. Cheryl, if you could stick around after we have informal time, if you can hang around and answer any more questions that people may have.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much. It was a very informative presentation.
Thank you.
Next week, we are canceling the meeting simply because it's the day before Thanksgiving, and this year especially, there are enough family issues going on that we felt it was best to go ahead and cancel a meeting. And so the next meeting is the 1st of December. As we close, we will, I'd like to recite the four-way test, and of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair
to all concerned?
Third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth, will it be
beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you again for everyone who was able to attend today. We will keep the line open for questions and just informal conversation. But see you in 2 weeks at the morning meeting of the first one of December. So thank you very much for attending today. And thank you, Cheryl, for the time you've spent here. And you know, the meeting is adjourned.